Share screen. Hi everyone, I'm Matt. Today I'm going to talk about electricity in NYC. We care because we don't want power plants sited in impoverished communities. We don't want to fund utilities through a mechanism that charges the poor the same amount they charge the rich. We want to generate fossil fuel free electricity, and we want to make it cheaper relative to fossil fuels. Electricity prices vary drastically around the country. New York, California, Alaska, Hawaii have the most expensive in the nation, and then the states in the middle kind of have the cheapest. Some of these are market design. Some of this cost is inherent to the geography. You have to pay to run a power plant and maintain the power lines. Some power plants are really cheap to run, like hydropower. You put a turbine in water and the water does the work. Some nuclear power plants are really complicated and have a lot of staff. Some power lines are easy to get to, they're above ground. Some power lines above ground get knocked down by hurricanes every couple of years, and that makes the electricity more expensive. Some power lines are buried underground, and you have to rip up the road to work on them. Con Edison mostly maintains power lines. It is legally not allowed to own power plants except for those that generate steam for its district steam system. NYC buries its lines underground. This is expensive. This is complicated. This is really reliable, but we pay for it. Your bill will have two main charges. You'll have a supply charge. This is literally paying the power plant to run. And then you have delivery charge. This is paying Con Edison to put wires in the ground and connect your building. For my old apartment, my delivery charge was more expensive than my supply charge. The supply charges are determined by the New York Independent System Operator. They have a big control room and they get to decide who runs. Every type of generator, hydro, gas, nuclear, puts a price, and then the cheapest ones get picked. However, you can't have cheap hydropower upstate get imported to Long Island because there's only so many power lines. You have like 3 power lines connecting upstate to Long Island. So the more expensive generators have to fire up in Long Island, the dirty oil ones, and then they pay that. A practical consequence of this, upstate's really clean, downstate's really dirty. We have transmission constraint in the middle of the state. Some entities can selectively buy certain supply. In fact, you can buy certain supply. The most important one is the New York Power Authority. They sell exclusively to government agencies and they get really cheap hydropower sold directly to some schools, some utilities, and the MTA. You don't have to buy your electricity supply from Con Edison. You can go to Direct Energy and Green Mountain Energy. These are called energy service companies, ESCOs. Some, like Green Mountain Energy, will buy claims to the solar and wind generated in New York State and sell that to you, but it doesn't affect the electrons that get to your building very much. Delivery costs are determined by the utility summing up their maintenance costs every year, and then they get to ask the Public Service Commission, can we increase our electricity rate to pay for these costs? Most states have a Public Service Commission. Additionally, you have reliability councils. For New York City, they determine how many power plants do we need within New York City to not have blackouts, and that's why NYC has peaker plants. There are 2 types of electricity market. The gray areas are traditionally regulated. All that means is they're vertically integrated. The utility owns the power plant, they own the transmission line, they connect your building to the grid. Someone said, hey, I own a power plant, why can't I connect to their grid? The utility said, you're not the utility, you can't. In the 2000s, they started to allow deregulation, and then some independent system operators formed. You're really familiar with ERCOT right now because of what happened in Texas. New York is the New York ISO, the independent system operator. They're competitive markets, non-utilities can sell power, and utilities are mostly responsible for the distribution systems. We have consumer-owned utilities, and we have investor-owned utilities. Investor-owned utilities are public companies owned by shareholders. They're designed to generate profit. Municipalities, some cities own their utilities. Sometimes there's a board of directors that are elected by voters that own the utilities. You can have public power, a municipal utility in a deregulated area, like CPS Energy in San Antonio. El Paso Electric, not connected to ERCOT, is in an investor-owned utility in a traditionally regulated area. I'm still confused about what a utility is. Con Edison only connects building to the grids and owns wires. NYPA owns power plants and power lines. They're also considered a utility by some. Some only own long distance power lines. You'll see this gets more complicated. Con Edison is 6 different entities. 2 of them are regulated utilities in New York in a deregulated marketplace, Con Edison of New York and Orange and Rockland Utilities. Then you have Con Edison Energy, they own power plants, and you have Con Edison Transmission that owns power lines. New York State has 6 major utilities. They're all investor-owned utilities except for the Long Island Power Authority, which is a public utility operated by an investor-owned utility. And then there are some pockets of public power like Freeport Electric and Rockville Center in Long Island near JFK Airport. Takeaways. Making New York State have public power will affect your delivery costs and maintenance most. For us, it would be within NYC. State and national market mechanisms have a greater impact on siting and transmission of clean energy. But there are mechanisms to influence this on the local level, and Steve Fox is going to go over what these bills are actually proposing now that you know the vocabulary. Thank you. Stop recording.